Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Zander Sprague.
Hello, Epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Zander Sprague, and today I am honored to be joined by David Sidoni. David, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, it's a lot to live up to that I have to be epic, but I appreciate it. I'm in my third act of my life right now. In my 20s, I did movies and TV, was an actor and had this wonderful career. And my late 20s, I adjusted because I wanted to have a family, and you have to be the top 1% or you're hustling your whole life in showbiz. Yeah. And so I started investing in real estate and immediately turned to the selling side of real estate, where I was working with people instead of numbers and investors.
Right.
Did that for about a dozen years. And it was around 2018 where my wife looked at me and said, "You're only happy when you work with the first-time homebuyers that you've been working with." So in 2019, at 49 years old, I started and founded the How to Buy a Home company, and basically threw all my chips into one pot and said, "I hope this works." And it's been a wonderful, almost 6-year run now of having a company that is service-based, client-based, helping underserved people achieve what, in North America is the ultimate foundation for your financial stability. Definitely. And I've done it through the medium of mostly podcasting, and we're doing YouTube and social media. And so I'm just an old guy hoping that people will listen to the cringy old man and realize that I know what I'm talking about and I can help you.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say I don't believe that we're old, David. So it's a state of mind. But, I wanted to, if you don't mind, because it is a fascinating part of your background. You started off and you were, I guess we'll call you a teenage adolescent actor, child actor.
Yeah. So I had the most bizarre showbiz career.
Okay.
I was doing, at 17 years old, I quit soccer, where I had a scholarship opportunities to go to Division I schools, because between my junior and senior year, we had one of those fame schools that opened on my campus. And so that's when I fell in love with musical theater. And I pursued that for a little while. And when I was 20 years old, I got really lucky. And there was a Disney movie musical called Newsies.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah. So it was me and Christian Bale and Robert Duvall and Anne Margaret and a bunch of other kids running around singing and dancing about the Union strike at the turn of the century, the 2 centuries ago.
Yeah. From
there, I got to, on that movie, I worked with Gene Kelly and Kenny Ortega and all these big wigs. And then I started dancing professionally, and I danced with Michael Jackson. And then I was on a teenage show that was for adolescents. And I was in all those crazy Tiger Beat magazines and stuff.
Wow.
And it was kind of like Saturday Night Live for what we called tweenagers.
Yep.
And then I started hosting TV shows, and that's where things got really interesting. Did all kinds of television hosting, kind of the Ryan Seacrest, Mario Lopez model.
Yeah.
And I was the Pat Sajak for the kids version of Wheel of Fortune.
Awesome.
Yeah. Except my Vanna was a cartoon. So it was a girl behind the board wearing one of those green suits with the ping pong balls all over her.
Oh yeah.
And so I talked to a cartoon all day for 8 hours, at 28 years old. It was an interesting life. And that was when, somewhere around then was when I was working with legend Dick Clark, and I was having a bad day, and he kind of told me, he said, "Hey, just so you know, you can't have a bad day. You have to be on all the time, because you're on camera." And that's when I kind of started to kind of refocus and think about what my career was going to be, and ended up moving and getting married and settling down and doing all the other things I wanted to do with my life.
Definitely. And that's, I think, an important part I talk about in my book is we all have choice in our life. And just because we've done something, be it a career, a relationship, a lifestyle for X number of years or months or whatever, you don't have to keep doing that, right? And so certainly I know my own career, I've done a host of different things I never thought I would do. Not quite as good as being on TV yet, but I'm hopeful that I'll be on TV soon. But my point is, if it isn't working for you, you can make a change. It is scary. Change is really scary. I'm sure for you, you were like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got everything, and now I'm going to walk away from this. I'm walking away from a paycheck. I'm walking away from, as much as one has stability in the entertainment industry, it sounds like you did have some stability. I mean, you were truly a working actor.
One of the things that when I love these broad topics, I love the understanding of where to find those epic moments in your life, those moments that mean something to you. At 17 years old, when I had the stable, simple, go to college on a sports scholarship,
Sure,
play soccer,
definitely.
made sense. Like that was easy. And at 17, I made that decision to, I always said I was going to follow my passion.
Yeah.
And my parents sat down with me and they were very clear. And immediately at 18, 19 years old, when I was, taking dance classes in the daytime and general education classes, because they didn't let me skip college completely.
Right.
And then working at a diner at 9 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning and sleeping for 4 hours and then going right back to it the next day.
Yeah.
I think I was really lucky in that by me just being a, precocious kid saying I want to follow my passion, I didn't have the security blanket.
Yeah.
And so, I was a working actor, but dude, did I struggle.
Absolutely. I do. I mean, just as an entrepreneur, you can absolutely say, I can look and say, I got paid this week, this month, whatever. As a real estate person, I, closed 3 houses this month, and that's great. But you're still worried about, what about next month? Just because it's good today doesn't mean it's good tomorrow. The real estate market can and does go cyclical, and all of a sudden you're flying high and the next day you're crying because you're like, I can't sell anything. Or if you have investment properties, all of a sudden you're like, well, the value of that is below what I owe and no one wants to buy.
I think sales, investing, sports, and showbiz are all great training grounds for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Because when you wake up every day and you have to create what happens, and not to mention the fact that when you're on a gig, you're auditioning for the next one. It's the same way that the same way that W-2 employees might be feeling like they're auditioning for a promotion every day. That's still only you still know where your paycheck's coming in the next 2 weeks.
Definitely.
So showbiz definitely prepared me.
One of the things I learned when I first became a professional speaker was Mark Victor Hansen, I believe, said, understand that when you get done a speaking gig and you walk off the stage, you're just another unemployed speaker.
Yeah.
Same way with acting. Once whatever you've been hired for, you go back to looking for the job. So as an entrepreneur, once you ink that deal, that's great. But where's the next deal coming? And that is really stressful. So one of the things I wanted to ask you as you're here in the real estate market is, what do you do to take care of yourself? So important, self-care.
Really interesting that you asked that, because I had numerous different things. And it was about 2 or 3 years ago where I was at some conference and the author for Atomic Habits was there. And I know that. I've known that. Since since the 90s, I've been on this personal growth journey for myself. And so getting those habits has been important. And so whether it's walking the dogs, what I found is habits that are flexible. Routine is wonderful, but the flexibility, of where I am, how old my dogs are, how old my kids are. I've had to take that time blocking and adjust it.
Yeah.
Throughout. And what's really funny is that like 2-3 months ago, I finally just broke down. I was having a Zoom with one of my colleagues, and she was bouncing up and down while she was talking to me because she was on one of those treadmills that goes under your desk.
Yeah.
And I finally said, boom. And so now that's a part of my routine.
Yeah.
So every morning I do a little coffee in the backyard. I'm fortunate to live in Southern California. So, 360 days a year, I can sit in the backyard and it's gorgeous and have a little coffee, have a little moment with me and the dogs and outside. Yep. And then I do something physical for myself in the morning. And I'm hoping that a year on that walking treadmill will actually start to see a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And exercise is so important for so many reasons. I mean, it is part of creating your epic life. Is movement is, I don't want to sound too preachy, but movement is sort of life. Like as we are perhaps there's a few miles on the old chassis here, David. Movement is what keeps us going. You said that when you start off, you had the chance to work with Gene Kelly and these people. We look at people as they're aging, and some of them are incredible, right? You're like, wow, look at that person. That's because you use it or you lose it. And
I just saw Dick Van Dyke in the past couple months.
Yeah, there was a whole thing about him having to evacuate or something.
Well, the guy from Coldplay reached out to Dick Van Dyke for his 99th birthday.
Yeah.
And said, I've been a fan forever for you, and created this entire project for him. And I'm a fan of his. So like over the past 10 years, in his 90s, he'll show up on award shows or Tony Awards or whatever. And he does a little dance. And guys kept young forever.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think it's so important. I mean, it was interesting when I was going through graduate school, getting my master's in mental health counseling. Literally didn't matter the course. All my professors talked about creating self-care and creating a plan. And I took that to heart. Now, perhaps it's because I was older than most of my colleagues. I was 45 and they were like 22. So they're like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And I'm like, oh, no, I get that. So I started in graduate school when I started doing counseling and as a practicum and stuff of doing the self-care routine because it's so important. I'm as a mental health provider, I have to hold a lot of stuff for a lot of people. Yeah. And you as a real estate agent, you're holding these new home buyers, right? There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of worry. There's a lot of unknown. You're there holding that for them. Well, at some point, you've got to do something for you to kind of let go of some of that stuff.
Yeah. Understanding whatever it is that you need to do to recharge. That's been a big part of, starting a brand new company at 49 years old and now sitting here at, 54 and doing my thing. It's so much of it has been about, okay, where are my moments during the day?
Definitely.
I used to, and I love the era we live in. I used to listen to music, and I still listen to music at certain times, but when I'm in the shower now, it's an inspirational podcast. Whether it's a business podcast or a personal growth podcast, that's what I'm blasting in the speaker. And, I had to get one of those wet, dry thing to take notes because I come up with so many ideas in the shower now, and some days it'll be music, but understanding what kind of recharge you need and when, and most importantly, the beauty of the fact that it's right there on our phone. We have 1,000 recharge devices. I don't mean the actual device of the phone, but I get it. Yeah. So,
and there is, but there's also something to be said for, just like you have your coffee and moment in the backyard of unhooking from all of it. Look, I love my technology. I love the instant answer. I love, like, oh, you know, David Sidoni, hold on, let me go to IMDb and see what he's been in. or look, I love IMDb. I can't tell, I watch all the time, and I'm like, I know that person. Where do I know them from? And it used to be that, you spent hours just noodling, going, where I saw. Now I can go, oh yeah, oh yes, I know, I saw him in Newsies. Great, awesome.
The greatest invention in this era is the combination of being able to pause a movie.
Oh yes.
Look somebody up and then get right back into it. Because
Absolutely.
otherwise you're sitting there the whole movie trying to figure out where the
you're not paying attention because you're like, I know I've seen him, and like, where did I see him? Yeah, no, absolutely. Now I do want to give you a chance, because I know, it is important, and there are lots of first-time home buyers. So tell me a little about how you're helping first-time home buyers.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want you to know, I appreciate the opportunity for me to kind of spread the word of my little revolution I've got going on. But it really all stems from the same place that what you're doing and what your podcast comes from, which is empowering people.
Absolutely.
And I just happen to be, in the dance world, in the musical theater world. I used to do all kinds of teaching and master classes and go to places to empower people with information that I had gained being a professional. And it wasn't necessarily glamorous, but it was an opportunity to share something with people and let them find inspiration in their own life.
Yeah.
And suddenly, at almost 50 years old, I'm looking at my wife and I'm going, holy crap, I can do this with this job now.
Yeah.
And so the platform that I've done it on YouTube and I've done it on the podcast, and it seems the podcast seems to be the one that most people enjoy, because when you're trying to buy a home, it's the most confusing, befuddling, overwhelming experience.
Yeah.
And nowadays, most people are used to a few clicks to figure something out.
Yeah.
Look at some reviews and figure out what the best thing to do is. Or you've got all these companies, whether they're insurance companies or out there saying, we'll compare everybody for you.
Yeah.
You don't go to an insurance company or an airline company or a rental car company. You go to a website that does all the work for you and then says, here, this is the best deal.
Yeah.
God, I wish it was that way in real estate, but it's not.
No.
So I gave something that people could listen to while they're doing the dishes or walking the dog or commuting to work. Just learn, just get comfortable.
Absolutely.
And then help people get in control with the process. It's like, I say on the podcast, I'm just like your goofy uncle who's been doing this for a long time, who doesn't necessarily live in your hometown, but goes, hey, this is what you're looking for in a realtor, in a lender, in a home inspector, whatever it is, to peel back the curtain and make this less overwhelming and something that people can feel more confident in.
Absolutely. And having bought a few homes, not a lot, but some.
Yep.
I know there's so much stress that goes into it. First of all, depending on the way I live in the Bay Area, so the way the real estate market here is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And in the sense that you see a place and it's, you better be ready to go and have the offer and like basically walk, like have it almost pre-written and just fill in the number, right?
Yes.
And if you don't, knowledge is power. So if you understand kind of what's going to go on, the expectation is set that this could take a while. You may find what you think is your dream home and you may not get it.
And the planning process is the biggest hole in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
There's, I preach a lot about how I really am trying to start a revolution, because the real estate industry, if you understand the way it works, it's just, it's borderline corrupt in that anybody can get a license, any idiot, and the brokers and the large teams make money by hiring people, undertraining them at a level that is ridiculous. My 14-year-old could pass the test.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, then the new people say, how do I learn how to do this? And they say, go get clients and sell them a home.
Yeah.
What? Like, what happened? Can you imagine the glass blowers in Venice working like that? No, it's a 20-year apprenticeship. It's like
totally. And more importantly, I actually back last century, when I'm originally from Boston, I was living in Boston. I got my real estate license because I was helping a friend of mine out doing rentals. Because in Boston, you don't get an apartment without a real estate agent. Yes. And I'm like, in order to do it, and again, I was doing it on the weekends just for some extra cash. If I rented an apartment, yay for me. If I didn't, it wasn't the end of the world. But I learned so much, and you're right. Passing the real estate exam it takes a little study, but it's not rocket science. And then you get out there, and all of a sudden you're like, I have no idea what to say. Boston, let's talk about the lead paint, right?
Yeah.
A lot of houses that are really old that have lead paint, right? And are you like, how do you answer that question? What is the right way to answer that question if it comes up, right?
Yeah. I mean, in California, it's 1974 was the a disclosure that we have, and anything beyond that is okay. And how many homes are built after 1974? Well, quite a lot.
Right.
And, it's different in every single area. And
absolutely.
For people to understand that you have an option as a buyer, and I mean, everyone understands you have an option as a seller, but I don't think the general public has been informed enough that you have an option as a buyer to go out and interview people and find out who you want to represent them. Most people end up nowadays, because of the beautiful convenience of technology, they save money on their own, they work on their debt on their own, and then they window shop on Zillow forever. And then they find a home they like, and they just call the first person they see online to open the door for them.
Yeah.
And a realtor shouldn't be a door opener. A realtor should be working with you 6 months to a year ahead of time, so that you can understand all the creative options that you might have, not only in the financing of the home, but also in what neighborhoods to explore. And you should know a ton about homes before you ever step foot in one.
Absolutely. You need to, again, you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know the questions that you should be asking.
Yeah.
Home inspector comes in and tells you all these things. I remember when I bought my first house, I was there and we did the home inspection, and I had a moment of freak out, David, because I was like, he's like, well, this isn't up to code. This isn't up to code. This isn't up to code. And I'm like, oh my God. Right. And he goes, yep. No. I just have to tell you this. You don't have to, it's not that it's wrong, but this switch cover or this light switch is not up to today's code. It's totally fine, but I just have to tell you that, that's not up to code.
If you're buying a home that's more than a month old, something's not up to code.
Absolutely. And again, information that to say, you're going to hear a lot of things.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean, imagine going into your doctor and your doctor goes, well, David, your weight is not exactly what it should be. And your blood pressure is okay, but it's not great. And, your eyesight, you can't read the small print anymore. And you'd be like, oh my God, maybe your weight, for example, is 2 pounds over what the quote ideal is.
Yes.
You're not about to drop dead of a heart attack. You're okay.
Absolutely.
But if your doctor didn't go, yeah, look, ideally you'd be X, you're Y, but you're actually okay because you're, within that range. With a house, you need to know before you even start. And again, we're both in California, the price of houses is such, it's a huge deal. Right. So you shouldn't be like, oh, yeah, I should know. Right. We don't make purchases. We go to buy a house, which is probably the single largest purchase any of us will make in our life. And we're so ill-informed. We get run over with stuff. I don't know about you. Do you talk to people about when you actually get to the close and you go in to sign 8 gazillion pieces of paper. I wish more people, I would have had more information because, again, it just got to the point where I kind of felt like I was at an autograph signing. I'm just signing my name. Yep. And I'm trying to read stuff, but you don't have time to go, let me read every single line of this. And half of it, you wouldn't understand it even if you did read it. And it's not that I'm not reading, I'm scanning, but I'm like, oh, this section's about, faults. And this one's about, that I'm in an earthquake zone, or I'm in a flood zone, or I'm in and you just have to sign it saying that you got it. But most people have not poured over the, I don't know, 90 pages or 150 pages.
It's a half inch to an inch thick. One of the things I explain to people is they'll be looking at HGTV and they'll be like, oh, that's the kind of realtor I want, someone I vibe with.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's part of it. There has to be a connection.
Sure.
But because they have the same, visual interior design concept when they look at a kitchen with you, doesn't mean that they can necessarily have been through the closing process multiple times.
Yeah.
And the preparation before a closing process to explain to a buyer who, like you said, 95% of North Americans, this is the largest financial transaction of their life. It's very rare that you're going to sit down and sign a bunch of papers for, right now the average is $427,000.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are doing that. And where you are, it's 800 to,
it is, it's ridiculous.
And so having a team that preps you for that moment and gives you some sort of understanding of what you're going to be getting into before you get there, it's crucial to the process. And that's the main mission that I'm trying to do I'm just trying to get the information out there to everybody. I love that y'all can research this stuff. But my gosh, so many people say, "Oh, I didn't want to bother a realtor until I was ready." Well, what that means is they start saving money and then they look online forever and then they find the perfect house and they call me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could help you, but we should have been preparing for this for 6 months to have all your finances in order and everything ready to go. And the beauty of the How to Buy a Home platform now, both the podcast and the YouTube, is I've got 5 years of data. People that reached out to me and said they were going to do this in 12 to 18 months, 72% of them got the keys in 4.2 months.
Yeah.
Which means they thought they were a year or two out and they were completely ready. And they were looking at homes in 2 months and writing offers in 3 months and closing 30 days later.
Yeah, totally. And that's key. Like anything, preparation is everything. You can't predict everything that's going to happen. There are times where you find a house that you really like, it looks okay, and then someone comes in with a last minute bid and the owner's like, all right, we got a bidding war. Or are you ready? Can you go higher? But the fact of the matter is, most people are buying close to or at the ceiling that they can afford.
Absolutely.
They don't have like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll go 20,000 more. No, they don't have that. Here's my range. And you as a real estate agent, show them their range. But the fact of the matter is, human nature, we would like better. We would like more comfortable. This house is more expensive because it's better.
Yeah. It's rare that I find people that will go $50,000 or $100,000 under what they're approved for.
Right.
Almost everybody's pushing the limit, which is why it's such an interesting, unlike buying a car or, buying a computer, there are usable, sensible options. But when you're comparing your rent to a mortgage payment, that's where people go, well, geez, if I'm going to pay, $500 more, or if I'm going to pay something close to my rent, I want at least that, if not better. And so
absolutely.
That's where everyone pushes.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, David, this has been absolutely fascinating. I just so enjoyed talking with you, to say the least. It has been epic. But how can people get a hold of you? How can they find you? How can they get educated?
Howtobuyahome.com.
Cool.
Everything's there. There's podcasts, there's a YouTube channel. It's all free and it's all educational, helping people all across America as well as Canada. The goal is to, as I've said, educate and empower people, and everything's there at howtobuyahome.com.
Absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And most excitingly, in February, I am starting my own TV show, Epic Begins with One Step Forward. If you think you'd be a good guest and you live in the Bay Area, or you're willing to travel to the Bay Area, reach out to me at epicbegins.com. And as always, I want to remind everyone that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward, with your host, Zander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Zander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.